International students become very adaptable. They have to work through these issues as they learn to be successful in that context. And companies, the industry, find these individuals very adaptable, very hireable, very attractive to be on their team. You know, their perceptions can be different. They may think that they were the best student in their class in their high school back home, and they come to the U.S. and they realize that the way that they studied in their home country, the way that they achieved the top grades, that the expectations and the way of studying in the United States is very different.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Simpletin Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about global degrees or global delusions and the real return on investment on international studies. So I am Adaora Dike, and I'm the host of today's episode. I am the business growth specialist at Simpletin Consulting. And with me here today, I have the founder of Simpletin Consulting, Mr. Timeyin Ayonronmi, as well as Mr. David Colbert, who is the Assistant Vice President of Trine University, who is in charge of international recruitment and global partnerships. So today we're going to be talking about international studies and if the real returns on international studies and if it is worth the hype or just a joke. So the first question I'm going to ask is, why do students in Nigeria chase international degrees? So I'd like to start with Mr. Timeyin, who has been in contact with a lot of these Nigerian students. So what do you think is the reason that they chase these international degrees?
Okay. Can we come back to that question? Let's come back to that question. Firstly, the last time I was on the podcast, I think it was a little bit shaky, right? And I think one of the feedback I got was like I was too stiff, too serious. So today you're going to forgive me. I'm going to be a little bit, off the cuff. So coming back to your question. So you asked me, why do international students or just, students abroad in Africa like to go? I think from the conversations I always have, I think it's about opportunities. I think one of the downsides to a place like Nigeria is the population and some of the infrastructures and things that are not really in place. So you don't really get a lot of opportunities as such. And even if there are just too many people competing for these opportunities. So for instance, if you want to have a good school, with the amount of people out for education, and right now in Nigeria, the average age of the population is about 18 years old, so which kind of means everyone's going to school. And if everyone's going to school, you can't have 300 people in a class, so you can't admit everyone. That's number one. Number two, not everyone can afford it, so it might be an issue. But when you talk about having to go abroad, there is that mindset of, I will have other opportunities, not just education, probably being able to work and be financially comfortable and probably maybe better experience. Some people go for exposure, but I would say generally it's about the opportunities that it presents in terms of the environment. So that's my view.
Okay. So Mr. David, as someone who is an international recruiter who has gone around the world recruiting students, what do you think is the reason that they chase these international degrees in America?
Hi, Adaora.
Hi.
Great to be here today. Thank you for having us. I've been recruiting internationally for about 13 years now at Trine University. Thousands of international students coming from over 120 different countries that we've hosted at Trine University. And I would say it is a combination of goals and factors that brings international students to the United States. Right now, we host over 1 million international F1 degree-seeking students in the United States. And there's a reason that is a really attractive thing to do with your personal and your professional life. Living abroad, traveling abroad, interacting in another culture, immersing yourself in another culture just in terms of professional, personal development, becoming a more globally minded individual. The opportunity to study in another country presents difficulties, and you have to learn to overcome those difficulties. Studying is as different as culture. So when you start your studies in another country, you're immersing yourself in a different educational culture. In addition to the culture itself, you have the educational culture. International students become very adaptable. They have to work through these issues as they learn to be successful in that context. And companies, the industry, find these individuals very adaptable, very hireable, very attractive to be on their teams. Much of the industries in America are very diverse in terms of their workforce. And so you have to learn to work with other people. You have to work with people from different cultures. For many students, immersing in American culture helps them learn the language much better. Some come from their English as a second language students, so they get to immerse in the language and really become very fluent in the language. And for like a Nigerian student, they speak English, but we have different Englishes as well. So you can learn to broaden your perspectives, be much more globally minded person, much more hireable, more attractive as you get into your career, and many opportunities open. So I think it's a combination of personal development, professional opportunities, and it really makes sense for many students because the world really is a global workforce. I lived in Dubai and worked in Dubai for 7 years, and I worked at a university where we had 70 different nationalities going to the university in Dubai, and many of those students are going to be working in Dubai in that workforce. And guess what the language is there? English. Most of the language, you're in an Arabic country speaking Arabic, but you're working with teams of people from all nationalities. And English is the medium of most of those industries there. And so I think these opportunities are not just in America or UK or wherever you choose to go, but that's part of the global workforce. So you open yourself up to many opportunities.
I think that's
degree.
the reason why Nigerians are everywhere, to be honest with you, because there are opportunities everywhere. But I think you're also talking about a particular persona, because what you're talking about is someone who looks at their life and thinks, I can do better. They have a drive and a very specific goal to want to achieve something. And like I said, probably the opportunities are not really there. So that's a particular persona. I think we were having a conversation the other time where you said you had students come and disappear. Now that's a different
That's
persona.
happened before, yes.
So talk to us about that kind of scenario.
Yeah, it's not really the persona, it's the sort of the incentive that some people have is to just sort of escape their own situation and get to a better situation. I think that, yes, it comes down to persona or intent for what you're going to do your studies, but I would say the vast majority of students that come to the United States and study, they're looking for that opportunity, and all have different incentives. Many of the international students in America are getting PhDs. Many of these students that are F1 degree-seeking students end up teaching in American universities after they get their PhDs. If you walk into any engineering building in America at an American university, you'll see the entire faculty is made up of professors from all over the world. Many of them come to the United States when they're 18 years old, seeking to advance their education and their careers. They end up teaching in America. They end up being part of our education system. So it comes kind of down to incentive. If you look at some of our great industries in America, in the tech industry, Microsoft, Google, many of the top people that are now CEOs or run these giant companies in America started as F1 students at 18 years of age.
Sorry, let's just elaborate on what F1 means, because a lot of people might not really understand that. So yeah, you can just.
So America loves acronyms. We love our acronyms. So, I'm a DSO, I'm a designated school official at Trine University. That means I'm one of the immigration officers. I help the students advising with their immigration questions and so most of the students that come to seek degrees in America are classified as F1. So F1 is the visa that you get, that you apply for to come to the United States and study. So F1 is considered you're in status. As a student. As a student, okay. Yes. So there are certain benefits built into that, but your main focus of being there is education, studies. Okay. And you have to adhere to the requirements of that study status. There are also J1. J is an exchange. So we have many students also that come to the United States on J1, so J exchange. They come for a year and then they're going back home. So, or they come for a few years or a semester, and they're just there for an exchange purpose, not degree seeking. So those are the main two categories of international students coming to the U.S. on a visa. J1 exchange, F1 degree seeking students.
Right.
Okay.
So you said you work closely with international students. So I want to know if there's like a common misconception about studying abroad that they've spoken to you about, like, oh, I came here thinking that America was this, or I came here thinking that was going to be different in this way, and then it just wasn't their reality. So is there any experience you can tell us about?
That is a very individual experience for many students. So, their perceptions can be different. They may think that they were the best student in their class in their high school back home, and they come to the U.S., and they realize that the way that they studied in their home country, the way that they achieved the top grades, that the expectations and the way of studying in the United States is very different. And they have to adapt. And sometimes it's quite a humiliating experience for them because they hit the wall. They arrive and they have this way of studying and way of organizing themselves that doesn't quite work in the context of an American education. The expectations are different. So oftentimes there's this real adapting period where they really have to figure out, oh, this is different. American professors have a lot of autonomy. So each one delivers differently, has a very different personalized way of delivering their instruction and different expectations. So each time you go into a classroom, you have to figure it out. Even American students have to adapt to that professor's way of doing things.
So can I ask a question about that? So a lot of students like me in Nigeria have this thing where they ace through their period in uni. So I just want to understand the difference. They cram a lot, right? Like they just. So my understanding with cramming, anyone you can correct me, because I don't cram stuff, and that's just because I just haven't got that kind of memory. I have a different way of understanding stuff. So they cram a lot of stuff. Obviously, you have to have a very good memory. How would that? Because you're saying it's a different style. So if someone came with a style of, they were very good at just reading and just basically spitting out exactly what they've read without any proper critical thinking or any other approach to understanding what they've read. How is that different to the American education system?
Yeah. Well, I certainly wouldn't throw out that ability. Okay, that is an ability that many students have. A lot of international students come from countries and systems where they really value rote memorization, remembering long strings of text or words or formulas, that sort of thing. And that is a skill. That can definitely, you can tap into that as a student. The difference is that you may be able to use that skill in certain areas. Cramming itself, usually it's connected to procrastination.
Oh,
So-
how's that? Let's
No, you just don't do anything until it's crunch time. You wait until the end of the semester and then you try to cram it all in the last minute. And there are some students that can function that way. But in reality, part of growing up and developing yourself as a student in higher education in the U.S. is starting to be proactive, preparing early, get yourself on a schedule, put yourself in position to not have to have cram session at the end. You still may have to, because you're taking in a lot of information. You're studying at a very high level. A lot of information, a lot of expectations from the professors for you to output a lot of information, ideas, and that sort of thing. But also fold in there critical thinking, interaction, communication skills. All these are very highly valued in the American education system. We have a huge set of general education courses that students have to take before they're even deep into their degree focus at bachelor's level. And that's different than many systems around the world. You go to UK or somewhere else and you might start your medical studies and you're just taking medical courses. You go to America, you have to do 4 years before you ever start medical school. And a lot of those courses are communications, psychology, sociology, marketing, management. You can take business courses, courses that are really more about self-development, and other areas of study. You have a certain amount of requirements you need to do. So one of the expectations that I always find is many of the international students are surprised at the breadth of courses that they have to take as part of their gen ed requirements in the U.S. And for many of them who've been in different systems, they haven't been required to take courses in writing, composition,
Oh, right. See.
communications, where they're doing presentations and oral arguments or debate, right?
Yeah.
So these are very common parts of and important parts of the American education system that are built into getting a bachelor's degree, because we see that those skills, the soft skills, the ability to relate to others and communicate your ideas and your arguments and to appear professional and prepared to function in that type of a setting. We consider that to be a very important part of the higher education system in the U.S. So it's a component of getting your degree. So many students are surprised about that. But in the end, they really, truly benefit from having those experiences and developing those skills.
So what would you say is that, from your knowledge or experience, the people you've kind of had, students you probably had conversations with that are international, what is that crossover challenge that they actually face? What do they actually say about the system that's different and why they're struggling to, perform?
Yeah, many of the students that I speak with just explained to me that they spent years just with their nose in the books, studying for high stakes exams at the end of the year.
Oh, right.
Right? And oftentimes in American, even high school, we don't really have a big giant exam that you take at the end of the year. You're not studying towards an exam, right? We don't have national exams, those sort of things. So every course, every class that you're in, it's a different outcome, right? So one of the things we really like to do is we have our students in a very strong orientation program at the beginning. We put them through a very good orientation program that shows them about, first thing you need to do is read that syllabus. Read the syllabus that every professor is going to start the class by handing out or connecting you to their syllabus, which is online or it's a hard copy. And you need to read that syllabus. Every professor's syllabus is different. And the syllabus gives you the whole schedule of activities for the entire semester. the expectations, outcomes. What type of testing are they going to do? Are they going to test you in a regular, is it written form? Do you need to write an essay? Do you need to write multiple essays? How many essays do you have to write? Do you need to do research? Is it a multiple choice test where you have to memorize a lot of technical terms? So part of it is orientation programs at the beginning. Give the students as much support as we can to get them prepared for that. Many of the students have experienced kind of spoon feeding of their education. They sort of passively taking in information. They know that they have an exam. They have to memorize all of this information and then spit it back out in a test. And that's not going to work as a student in the United States in our higher education system. They're not going to spoon feed you the information and give you all of the answers and tell you to memorize these, and then we're going to test you on that. It's more about interaction, being a proactive learner, meaning that you cannot be passive. You cannot just be a passive learner and sit and take in information and then know you're going to be tested on it, because that's not going to happen. It might happen in some classes. You may have, we have over nearly 5,000 institutions of higher ed in the United States. There's a lot of diversity within that. And in your freshman year, you might go to a class where there's 800 students in a class. I've been in classes where, 800, 1,000 students in a lecture, and that professor is only going to give an exam. Not going to do anything. He doesn't have time to do anything else. At Trine University, we'll have classes of 10 or 15 students. And those professors have very different expectations about what you're going to do, what type of projects you're going to do, what types of activities. Actually questioning your professor is highly encouraged in America.
Can never be Nigeria.
And many of our international students have never done that, never experienced that in their lives.
Yeah.
And culturally, it is very inappropriate for them to be doing that in class. Calling your professor by their first name.
No.
Many professors say, just call me Dave.
In Nigeria, if you don't call a lecturer, for instance, as a doctor, Dr. This,
yes,
you might fail that course. It's like the hugest.
Yes.
Like the hugest.
The interesting
disrespect.
thing is that our professors usually love our international students because they tend to be much more formal than our American students, right?
Okay.
So sometimes they're actually taken aback and they feel fairly,
acknowledged.
They really enjoy working with international students because oftentimes they're more formal in their interactions with professors. Whereas American students have been conditioned to kind of be, it's my professor, but it's also my buddy, right? I mean, we have that sort of, not always, but many of the professors prefer to have a little bit less formal interaction with students. And at Trine universities, our students get invited over to their professors' homes for dinners and events. Yes. And they really get to interact with their professors' family. Our professors' families often bring their kids to campus and they hang out in the classroom and they get to know the students. So there is a level of informality in many cases that international students aren't used to. But the intent behind that, and I think it works often, is to create an environment where you feel secure and safe to be you, but also so to express yourself, because we find that Americans very individualistic society where self-expression is very much a part of our culture. As you might see on TV or the news, we're doing it all the time, sometimes to detrimental effects, but that's a part of our culture that many international students enjoy after they sort of adapt to it. And they realize that they are able to express themselves.
Yeah.
There's a point, where, you have to know where that line is.
Yeah.
But in terms of creating an educational environment that's more like family, community. We tend to sort of focus on that as part of what creating that environment where everyone is able to learn and express themselves, and succeed in their studies.
Yeah, that gives the students like that communal sense of learning where they are not scared to express their thoughts and are really open to learning more. I feel like having that kind of system where it's not as rigid gives them more flexibility and more ways to express themselves, basically. So now I want to talk to Mr. Timeyin about something. So your experience with education is not, I won't say is unique, but it's different to the typical Nigerian person. Although, because like a lot of Nigerians who have multiple nationalities, like dual citizenship, they come back to Nigeria at some point to study and go back. So your experience in Nigeria and going back home to further your studies, how was the shift with you and also with a few of your friends? Because I know you had friends in Nigeria who also studied abroad. So how was that experience moving from the Nigerian system from your during high school to the English system, I believe, during your further education? Yeah.
It was quite interesting. I'd say, so I'll talk about the Nigerian experience first. I had an issue with cramming. I'm not good. I just can't memorize things like that. I'm more visual. Obviously, it took me time to find out because, I had quite a lot of Fs in high school. But I was very good at maths. I was there were certain things I don't need to think too much about. But I think the Nigerian system at that time was your teachers were not really approachable. That's one issue. So for someone like me who needed that extra, let me come talk about what I'm struggling with, it wasn't easy because you don't have the opportunity to do that just because of the culture, just how people are. I was saying to someone, I think I've said this before. I went to university somewhere in Abuja, and we're going there just to have a conversation about Trine and just link up about other things. And we were waiting outside, and there were other students waiting outside this. I think it was a dean. I'm not sure what his position was, but we're just waiting outside the door, and the door opens, and this student went in, and I tell you, man, the guy was, before she even said it, he was barking at her. What do you want? What do you want? And I was like, whoa, what's going on? So I was with a simpleton, and I was with a simpleton at the time because both of us had gone there. So she saw that, and she was a bit like, oh. So I said to her, you're gonna go inside first, and kind of take. And she was like, oh, boss, no, I can't. I said, look, listen, go inside, and if they admit you, I'll let your parents know. So anyway, we went in, but again, I think it was that whole approachable thing. He wasn't approachable. So even starting the conversation, I had to find a way to ease him into what I was trying to say. And I think that was my experience. On the plus side, in Nigeria, I'm a very creative individual. So I think I was very creative in school just because of how things work in Nigeria. Sometimes you have to pull things out of the bag from nowhere. So you have to use like other ways of thinking. It may not be critical thinking, but there is that bit of being creative on how you either study or how you communicate with other, students. So the Nigerian system for me, it was just the cramming towards an exam thing that was a bit of a struggle, just because I just didn't have that, and because I didn't have that, the style of my learning and the style of teaching just didn't really match. So I just didn't have, yeah. So I struggled. So so I was only good at subjects I liked, and that's that. Anything else was just going to be an F. And then what just happened was, I guess I had to take ownership and just be accountable. So I had to put more effort into things I didn't like just to get my C's, uh, just to get my C's and not go through like having F's. So, so I think that. But then, as David was talking about, the transition now was different because I wasn't proactive and not being allowed to be proactive due to the system, the vibe, the culture. That was now another challenge because I wasn't gonna go to a lecturer to say, I need help with this. So I'm following the same system now where I'm just sat struggling with how I study, right? So now the system allows you to. So Dave was talking about the syllabus, and one of the things about the syllabus, like he was saying, if you look at the outcomes, you'd know that certain things were going to be marked on assignments only, had nothing to do with exams. But if you're not paying attention, you carry that same mindset of I'm going to cram, and then the important word you use, procrastination. So I let it be to like towards the end, and then I block my brain. And for someone like me who's not really into cramming, I get in and zaps. I'm nervous, everything's blank. And I'm just sat there thinking, dude, what are you going to do? And then the other thing that doesn't exist, Dave, is I can't speak to the next man. Because in the UK, obviously that's not allowed. But in Nigeria, we can probably. I'm not saying it's doable, but because you're next to maybe a Nigerian guy, he can link you up a little bit. You can language a couple of things. But obviously now I'm with obviously other people.
Networks are important everywhere.
Yeah. You got to know people to know the things that you need. So for me, it was a bit of a like I can't speak to this person because they're Spanish. They might not speak good English. So now I'm in that zone where I know the system has changed. I can't. Yes, it's an exam thing, but it's just one of those things where you're now trying to switch your mind to this is just down to me. I've crammed. It's not my system of kind of studying, but that's what I've been used to because we're always waiting for that big exam. So I think I had to transition that to actually networking. So when I started struggling, so my first year, I think I talked about this before, studying financial accounting kind of requires you to cram. You have to get good memory because a lot of it doesn't really come with like, critical thinking. It's more about structure and setting specifics. So cramming was going to be good if you're good at it. So anyway, I wasn't surprised that I failed because again, it wasn't something I was good at. I didn't have the support system. I was just on my own. Couldn't go to lecturers. I just couldn't do much. So I think what changed for me was when I decided to just change my major to business studies, and then I started networking. So networking with just different people. So I had friends from like Ghana, had friends from like Spain, I had friends from like Guinea-Bissau, Portugal. So now I'm starting to understand that, okay, you don't speak good English, but you seem to be very good where everyone's like coming to you for stuff. So I started trying to have more like, friends that I can study with. And then when I go home, I ring them up. I never got to the bit of talking to lecturers, to be honest, because I think that takes time out of your system just because of the cultural thing that I've been in for quite a while.
I do think that that's almost advice that you could give to the international students in the U.S. as well, is develop your community, because your community is your support, and these are your friends, your peers, your advisors, and don't be afraid to rely on the help of others to reach out. We build a lot of support systems into our universities in the U.S. so that our international students, all students, can get academic support, psychological support if they're going through culture shock or depression or something. And in many cultures, that's not available either to a lot of students. So we have a lot of support structures built into our universities. And one of the mistakes some students make is they isolate themselves. They get homesick, they get kind of inward looking, and they don't reach out, they don't seek support. But these end up being some of your greatest, your network, your support structures, your friends, your community. These can be ways that you can, or help that you can rely on when you run into troubles, because you always will, or have difficulties. And then Tim brought up an important point, which is kind of know yourself, know your strengths, he's becomes aware of his strengths and weaknesses within whatever educational system he's in, or which class. And that's one part of personal development, is you're starting to understand yourself, be self-aware, know what your strengths and weaknesses are. We tell students, say you're in class for an hour. Be prepared to study 2 to 3 hours outside of that hour of study that you're in the class, because you're not going to get spoon-fed or given in the lecture. Half of the lecture, you might think, well, how does this apply to anything? In some courses, you go in and the professor starts talking about his research or his experience, and you're like, this is not going to be on an exam. And half the class is taken up by some anecdotes and stories or interactions. And so be prepared that you're not just going to sit in class and that's studying. Mm-hmm. What happens outside of your classes, that's very important. And building a support system where you tell your friends, you have a group of friends that are very serious about their studies. We'll meet in the library at 4, we'll be there until 9. We're going to do 5 hours together. This is very important. And we see that in life in general, that your support systems and your friends, your community, your peers can be an invaluable support system for you. So, surround yourself with people that have different abilities. Mm-hmm. Timeyin did that sort of naturally, organically. He found these different students that have these different skills, mm-hmm. and was reaching out to help them, because we often mentor and tutor each other in areas that we're not strong in. We get mentoring and help from our friends. So that's another aspect of it that's very important.
All right. Something I will say is that as a podcast, we're not advocating for you to ask your friends in the hole, because Mr. Timeyin mentioned something about that. So we don't advocate for that here,
don't do that. Don't do that. Yes,
don't be like Mr. Timeyin.
Not that I never did, to be honest with you. But what I just mean is, sometimes you're not as uptight because you're with a fellow Nigerian in this system, right? So I guess that's just, it's a mental thing. So it's not like, people actually go out of their way and blah, blah, blah. But I think sometimes you can look at someone and already eyes tell you that they're struggling too, right? And that's what I kind of mean, that you can turn to someone and you just feel like I'm blank here. But I guess in the UK, you never get that connection. So you never feel like, oh, we're in the same boat, or, because I remember having a friend who, fortunately, I think I sat next to him doing geography. And luckily for me, all he did, so I looked at him, because he was just rapid. Brr, brr, brr. And these Nigerians sometimes, man, they're super talented, man. Like sometimes it's like boom, 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 boom. You're supposed to use 1 or 2 sheets. Some people are like 10, 15, boom, boom, boom. They just keep asking for stuff. So I'm there obviously struggling to get through my first page because I've gone blank now. And I just looked at him. And as I looked at him, he kind of knew that I was a bit like struggling. So he just gave me the thumbs up and just said, just get on. And when he did that, all of a sudden, what I just did was I just relaxed a little bit, because I was quite tense. I just relaxed a little bit, and before I knew it, everything just started flowing. And geography was one that I didn't really struggle with. So I was quite shocked that I was like but again, it was this whole cramming thing. It's not something I do. So I just got a little bit. And yeah, so I got past that, and that was one of the subjects that I used to have an A. So for me, it was just the whole process of learning that's not my style that got me into that situation. So what I just meant is for you not to do that. It's against exam practices, but I just mean that sometimes you can look side to side and not feel uncomfortable. But now when you're like in a different setting, you've never spoken to your Spanish friend or whoever it is next. It's just that thing of you just get blocked and fed up, and you might give up and not even want to try, further in that exam. So I think for me, that's pretty much, what it is. I say one other thing in Nigeria, I think maybe boarding school, if you go boarding school, you get to do prep. And prep is like a time where you actually get to study. Yeah. That helped me. I know a lot of people don't talk about Fs. Everyone talks about their A stars all through, because they were that good on stuff. And this is why I'm very passionate about the young people these days, and why I talk to them about how you approach work, and why that same attitude of being proactive. If you were not proactive in your learning, it will transition into work. And that's what I see most of the time is when they turn up, it's almost like they're expecting me to just say, do this, they go away, get it done, and that's it. So it's the exam type of approach. I just have this thing I need to do.
No, it's a very simple, I go back quickly to the syllabus. I often tell students, just go to the back page, because that's where the calendar is of schedule of events that the professor's has laid out for you, but also the weightings. The weightings of the exams or the presentations or the homework or whatever, you'll see that they percentage-wise weigh out, and many students are shocked the exam's only 30% of the course. So, I mean, you ace that 100% on the exam because you're great at taking tests, but it's only 30% of the weight of the course. So you can still fail. You can still get a great score on your exams. But if you haven't done the other work that are weighted sometimes equally to exams, because you're being evaluated in different ways, in different courses. So, that's part of being proactive, is you get that first day of class, you get that syllabus and the introduction to the course, and you get in there and look. Another thing I want to say is what I found interesting as universities, I've worked in many different universities in the US and abroad, and an interesting thing that I noticed last 20 years or so is the loudest building on campus is the library.
Wow.
It's quite ironic.
When you walk into the libraries at universities all over America now, you go in and it's chatter. And you look around and what it is study groups. Groups of students getting together, doing projects, working on studying together. At Trine University, you walk upstairs in the library and there's a whole set of conference rooms. Towards the mid-semester, end of semester, those are just full and booked, because groups of students and friends, peers, will book those conference rooms, and you'll see one student leading them through formulas and writing things on the chalkboard, on the whiteboard. And so this idea of studying together, being very proactive, and working your way through problems together so that you can all understand when you go in and take the test or you present the studies, or present whatever research project you're on or whatever. The library has become something different in America. They still have quiet areas, but they'll have most of the activity done in libraries now is group work, students talking through things, studying together, hanging out. It's really very interesting.
Well, I could say that I benefited from that type of system because me and my friends did that a lot.
Good.
Where we'd go to conference halls in the library and just one person, can I make a shout out? I'll shout out to Diane. It was always the teacher in front with the board and the marker
Very good.
just teaching the rest of us. So something I'd like to ask finally is, when we're talking about return on investment in international studies, at Trine University, what could you see is the return on investment for international students after they've spent so much money in tuition, accommodation, everything, coming to America for study? What could they say at the end of it was the return on that, on everything that they did?
Yes. I have been continually amazed and really very proud of our international students that have, I've been there 13 years. I'm the DSO, the school official, immigration official at the university, one of them. And so we track our students after they graduate, when they move on into their professions. And I can honestly say that, especially from the standpoint of when they arrive on campus at 18, when they're going through their studies and sometimes struggling through very difficult parts of their educational experience over 4 years, getting internships and doing practical types of activities during their studies, the return is amazing. Not just on a personal level, but professionally, definitely. We have students working in all different industries throughout the U.S., many of them now on green card, many of them now U.S. citizens. Post-completion work authorization in the United States is quite a valuable aspect of the F1 student visa system. It's a benefit built into studying in the United States. It's called OPT. So you study and finish and complete your studies, complete your degree. You're given authorization by the U.S. government to work for 1 year. Post-completion work authorization is what it's called. And our students are working in industries throughout the United States, in engineering, tech, healthcare, banking, finance, all types of businesses, all throughout the United States. And we have 100% job placement among our international students. Another thing I can say is if you're in a STEM field, you get an additional 2 years after the 1 year of OPT. It's called STEM OPT.
Sorry, could you just break down that?
So
STEM?
optional practical training, OPT, is built into the F1 student visa. When you complete your studies, you apply for OPT and you work in the industries related to your field of study. If you're in a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, or math, you are allowed then to apply for an additional 2 years on top of the 1. So you get 3 years of full-time work in the United States post-completion of your degree. Many students then go on to get a degree at the next level. So they may do a bachelor's degree, do their OPT, do a master's degree. Once again, they're eligible to apply for OPT. And you can do STEM OPT at 2 different levels. So you can do a master's, then a PhD, both do OPT, STEM OPT at both levels, or a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. So, and many of the return is not just for the students, but for the industries in America as well. Mm-hmm. So we get very highly skilled, very highly trained international students from all over the world. Our industries hire them, train them, give them certifications and lots of different experiences in their businesses. And many of them apply for H-1B, which is the work authorization that often comes after OPT. And right now, we have many of our students are now working in some of the great industries in America at a very high level. We have students at Google, Amazon, Tesla, all of the automobile industries, top tier healthcare industry in America, banking, finance. We have students who have launched their own companies, even gone back home, launched their own companies, and become very successful. So I would say the return, what we often say is that you get what you give. What you put in is what you get out. So I had the experience of, we had many students sponsored by their government come to the United States, and they were full paid, everything paid. And they never wanted to do an internship. They just wanted to get their degree and go back home. Well, many of them went back home and found that the job market in their country had crashed. And so they went back home and they sat and waited for the next thing to happen. There were a few of those students from that group that participated intentionally in internships, co-op. They worked while they were studying at Trine, and then wanted to participate in OPT. Even though they weren't required to, they could have gone back home and just, been put in a position or tried to find work. Those students excelled when they went back home. So their return was immediate. They went back to their home country, interviewed for some jobs, and had this incredible experience. Their English was much better. Their ability to relate in a professional environment, they were very, very prepared to enter right into the job market. So it's not just that the return is not handed to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You get what you put into it. And I would say what makes me proud is we bring international students from all over the world, and our professors are continually impressed by the work ethic, the amount of work the students put into it, and the success that they have in their studies and in their careers.
I think the highlight that you just mentioned there is the internship experience, getting you ready. And this is something that, I'd really like in Nigeria, a lot of universities. To be honest, I'm actually thinking that at some point, Simpletin, we're going to be pushing for this to even start at high school. Getting some kind of, holiday type of practical work, where we've had that before actually, where we had a 12-year-old come in because his mom had said he was just good with tech stuff.
Yeah.
And she just wanted him to use the energy somewhere else. And we got him in. Obviously, the first thing is the mindset of this is serious.
Yeah.
Had to be switched. But I can tell you that his experience, which he probably never forgets, gave him more confidence. And even at 12, right now, he's probably way better than a lot of graduate students just because of that experience. And that's why at Simpletin, we're very, very, very big on that internship experience. And we make it very practical, and we make it very hands-on. We make it really tough and difficult. Right? It ain't easy. So I would really encourage a lot of universities, but also shout out to Now University. Yeah, you guys have been doing really well for Simpletin. And hopefully we can have more collaboration, because they're the first ones that I've seen in Nigeria creating that pipeline of opportunities when it comes to internships.
Yeah.
And it's just something that you kind of touched on that I think, if you had that, if you went back home, that experience would come in as a valuable asset to an employer.
100%.
You can't just come back with no experience, just a certificate, and think everyone's going to open their doors and just say to you, we're going to pay you this amount of money. It's just not going to work. So Now University, you're doing good. So I think that's it. Just to go back to one thing before we probably close, because I also want schools to encourage kids that are not like your top performers. Because you've talked about the fact that you provide a lot of support.
Yeah.
A lot of schools focus on the guys who score, the 7 stars, and get the accolades. And I think that also impacts confidence, because I'm talking from experience. I'm not dumb. That's what I would say. But the reason I say that is because you get to feel like you're dumb when the focus is around these guys who get these accolades, and you're like just put in the corner, because it's almost like that whole education, coming out with the top test scores or exam scores is what's more important than the whole development of the individual. So for me, who struggled to keep up with certain learning styles and learning patterns and even teaching styles, when I reflect back, it took me to solve that problem for myself.
Yes.
So I had to figure it out and figure out what my strengths were and how best I could actually perform. And that was really when my genius came out, when I really knew the magic of who I was and how I could apply what I do. And so now I'm very confident about what I bring in terms of my intellect. But that had to come with a lot of self-awareness, and not a lot of kids at an early stage are at that spot where they're thinking about internally, what am I good at? You know, I have this conversation with my son a lot of times. I say, look, you got to do you. Don't think about everybody and try to be like everybody. You have to focus on what do you do very well and what don't you do very well? How can you adjust those things? Because in international studies, this is going to be your very first challenge. Like I said, for me, that transition was difficult. Maybe if I was, you know, a good crammer, memorizing things, it may not have really mattered, but I think it will still, because like I said, some things were just assignments. You weren't expected to do tests. Some things were more group work. We had to do group projects, and that's how we get scored. So meaning everyone has to be pulling their weight for the team to actually get the best scores. So it had little to do with the individual having to wait to this moment where they write everything down. So all that kind of impacted how you approach things. And, you know, if you're not proactive, it kind of impacts your scores. So I just want to just say to educational experts, institutions, please do encourage those who may not be top tier, because they likely will be your top talents in the future. So find a way to give them the support, find a way to kind of, you know, encourage them and, you know, give them pairings, just find a way, you know, and limit the whole. I know other people kind of get their own shine, they deserve it. But I think when you kind of make it seem like it's about what one person performs over the other, it really does impact the mindset and the confidence of the other ones. Because one of the things I was just going to touch, and I'll just stop here, is sports. When I used to play football, it's the same thing. I was really good, but confidence wouldn't let me try certain things. Because that belief of people who are obviously like your sports coach and what giving you that encouragement, and not just focusing on the guy who's scoring 10 goals and dribbling everyone on the pitch. So again, I had to build my confidence just out of enjoying the sport, you know? So that support and not focusing on, oh, this person's top. Yes, they deserve it. But these other guys need some kind of mentoring, coaching that has to do more of a mindset, self-awareness, confidence boosting kind of thing. So if they can package something to help those kind of students, I think that would be, really good.
All right. Thank you very much.
I'll stop there.
So we've come to the end of today's episode. And from what we've heard, the return on investment on your international studies depends on how much you put in. You don't get anything in return if you don't put anything in. So it's not just hype when you actually do the work, but it's just hype when you don't. So thank you all for watching this episode. Please follow us on the Simpletin socials on Instagram and LinkedIn, and comment on if you think international studies is just hype or if it's actually the real deal. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching. Bye.
Thank you.